Yeah. We got to accept that, Rob Manfred's going to want to keep it going because he said yesterday that he wants to see more star pitchers participate in this, that there aren't enough star pitchers like a Scherzer or a Verlander, and you can go on and on and on because the pitchers don't want to pitch in these games simply because it would be too much stress on their elbows and shoulders, and they're not ready to go all in just yet. And while this was great yesterday, and the pomp and circumstance and the games themselves all were enticing, and I would say that they were competitive, and the players really love playing for their teams. Those teams are not paying those players $150 million.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, I think about Steve Cohen paying his players $350 million collectively, and one of those players, unfortunately, is not going to make it. You realize that, while this is great and everybody who seems to be a part of it loves it, the real situation here is that, you're getting paid to play baseball and you're risking injury in games that really mean nothing for anybody.
Well, they don't mean anything for the owners of the teams. And for the most part, the diehard fans of the local teams that they root for, they don't generally care all that much, at least here. I mean, I think that, in this country, I'm sure Japan is going absolutely crazy. And maybe the Japanese baseball fan cares more about this last night than the Chiba Latte Marine winning a championship. They may, I don't know. But for you and me, the Mets winning the World Series is the biggest thing. And for Brandon Nimmo, he's one that said it, that the Mets winning the World Series is the biggest thing. But whether it's the World Baseball Classic or something else, I mean, you really do come to the realization when you're around it, as much as we're around it, that we care more about the championships than they do. I mean, because remember, if they don't win, they're still getting paid a lot of money to play, and their lives are great, and a lot of them are giving it their all. And there's some players that flat out say that I'm playing for the money, and I don't blame them. I'm not knocking them for that, because take care of yourself, take care of your family, take care of your chickens. But Kayvon Thibodeau said, do you have more pressure on you when you're playing in a playoff game? And he goes, no, I just feel like it's more of an opportunity for me to go out there and get paid. And he's right. And there's a lot of guys who share that same mentality. So, when we're going nuts about the WBC and saying, I can't believe these guys care so much about this. Well, this is not just a reality with the WBC. It's a reality in pro sports. We care more than they do.
What I'd like to know is, one of these players is going to want to start getting paid in front of these big crowds and TV contracts and everything else. I'm sure they're getting a little something, but I mean.
Yeah, what do they get? I have no idea.
I have no idea either, but they're putting it on the line. They're playing hard, and obviously guys are getting hurt. Altuve's out for a while, and you got Diaz is done. I mean, I think that's probably just a few guys that got hurt. I don't necessarily know that there's anybody other major that got hurt. I didn't see it because I have not paid attention to this at all.
Yeah, I'm really not interested in it, and that's fine if people are. I'm not going to sit here and tell you don't like it or don't watch it or don't enjoy it. You can. But I really, it is a bit of a problem for Major League Baseball that there's so much interest in this and not as much interest in their regular season.
Well, you know what? It's interesting because the commissioner's all over this. I mean, he wants it. He likes it. And obviously the interest is there. They have racked their brains, according to him, about different timing, and there's really no other time but this time to do this.
Yeah.
They can't do it in the middle of the season, and they certainly don't want to do it at the end of the season because they don't want to go up against the NFL.
That's right. This would not be as talked about, as popular. The ratings would not be as much. There's no doubt about it. And you think about right now, this is the perfect time to have something like this on last night. It's in between the tournament games. Yeah, you got regular season basketball and hockey, but I mean, for anybody who's a baseball fan or loves baseball, you're not distracted by anything else.
I didn't watch any of this. I watched the Ranger game last night, and I watched my defense just completely panic in the face of a fierce forecheck, and I don't know what the hell Condre Miller was doing last night. Completely played one of his worst games probably as a Ranger this year after having one of his best games. But, watching these hockey games going down to the wire and everybody pushing to possibly take over first place in the Metro. I mean, last night the Devils and the Rangers both missed a major opportunity to move up and get on the heels even closer to to the Carolina Hurricanes, but it wasn't done. But I wasn't watching any of this baseball.
I know.
I just wasn't. I'm just not interested.
Yeah,
and I know the guys are. I know they are.
And the players are.
It.
And I do think that the international fan is. I do think that the American fan who might have Puerto Rican heritage, Dominican heritage, who lives in the United States now has a huge interest in this, and I respect all that. But I think for someone like me who baseball was the Mets and the Yankees growing up, loving the Mets, having friends that loved the Yankees, that's what baseball was to me. And everybody else was just the opponent coming in.
Well, it's kind of different. Like if they had it, if it was truly celebrated in the Olympics, it's a little different story.
Yeah, because the Olympics has history and you really feel like you're representing your country with the Olympics. I mean, this is just, it was born a few years ago and it just doesn't have the same type of feel, but and maybe it will. Maybe this is just the beginning of it. And I would not be surprised if they tried to do this more and more and more because of the money and the advertising and the interest and all this stuff. And that's what drives everything. I mean, we see it in the NFL, and this is always a fear of mine, that the greed, and I hesitate when I say greed because I think everybody tries to make the most money possible. But, the drive for global money in these leagues sometimes shuts out the fan that built the league. And you said it not that long ago when we were talking about London games, Germany games, and everything, that the Super Bowl has to be on U.S. soil. And every team in the NFL should be on U.S. soil. A little different
also. There's no international influence when it comes to players on the field, in the NFL.
Right.
The international influence is in hockey, basketball, and baseball.
Right.
There are many countries that are represented all through three of those three major leagues. And, of course, then there's Major League Soccer, which is not that far behind these guys, by the way, in terms of attendance and,
the Major League Baseball, you're saying.
Right, yeah. I mean, the point being is that I could see the NBA going to like an international 2-week tournament in the middle of their season and maybe lopping off some games.
Yeah.
And doing that and having that kind of thing being played out and those guys all playing for their countries while you restart the league right after that, and maybe instead of playing 82 games, maybe you're playing 72 games.
Yeah, I mean,
I could see that. I could definitely see that.
But like for me and you as Knicks fans growing up and loving the team and wanting them to succeed, what are we going to be into that at all?
Probably not. But I mean, if you want to make extra money and you want to have different eyeballs in the middle of a season,
that's a way to do it.
That's a way to do it. Now, the one thing about basketball, it is in the Olympics, so every 4 years at least you do get that. In hockey, there are international tournaments every year. They usually are at the end of the season, and the guys that are in the playoffs usually don't make those teams. And if they're knocked out in the first round of the playoffs, some of them will go over and play in those international tournaments. But I don't know. This is it's a weird one. Just simply, we lost a player. The Astros lost a player. I'm sure there are a few other players that I'm missing that got hurt in this. It's unfortunate. I know that the players love playing it. I'm not interested. All I know is I'm not interested. And it's unfortunate. But I will say now that it's over, now that we can start focusing in on opening day next week.
Yeah, well, this is what I think is going to be really interesting because this WBC clearly was the most popular of all of them. And more eyeballs were on this. Team USA, Japan, Ohtani, Trout, everything. So now opening day is usually one of those moments, one of the best moments in the baseball season. And it's going to feel, for some people, including the players that were in these high-intensity baseball games in the WBC, like opening day is not going to feel as important.
Well, not for Nimmo, it will.
For Brent, yes.
I think for Verlander, it will. For Scherzer, it will.
But not all of them.
I know,
not all of them.
But anyway, it's over with. It's done with. And now we can start getting ready for the New York Mets and the New York Yankees to open their respective seasons next week. Now, you brought up Willis Reed, and when I found this out yesterday, I got to tell you, this is the third of three guys that I really truly admired growing up, and anybody who's my age or a little bit older than me who remembers, of course, those great Knicks teams of the 70s. And when Willis got here, Willis, the interesting thing about Willis Reed is that he was drafted by the Knicks and he only played for the Knicks. He had a short career. He only had a 10-year career, but he won an MVP. He won a Rookie of the Year. He won an All-Star MVP. He was a multi-time All-Star, and he wasn't Lou Alcindor or Kareem. It wasn't, Will Chamberlain. He was Willis Reed. He was our guy, and he loved being the Knicks captain. And there was that iconic moment, May 8th, 1970. Believe it or not, that game was blacked out in New York.
I know.
Game 7 but you think back then, the TV rights weren't nearly what they were making off of ticket sales. Mm-hmm. So they didn't want to hinder ticket sales by having the game on TV locally.
Yeah, if you had to watch this game, the only way to watch the game was being there. You could listen to it on the radio.
You had Marv Albert.
Right, but the only way you could watch the game was being in the building, and they did play it on tape delay, I believe.
They did.
Hours later, yeah.
Yes, on ABC. And, the interesting thing is that I remember sitting there listening to it with my dad on the radio. And Marv Albert was the announcer. And we used to listen all the time on the radio in the car and everything else. And it was just, I don't know, I think about Rod Gilberto's passed away, Tom Seaver's passed away, and Willis Reed. Those were 3 of my idols growing up when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we had Clark Gillies pass away, who was an icon for the Islanders around here. That's 4 guys in the last, 3 years.
Yeah, that were right in your wheelhouse.
Right in my, not so much Clark, because Clark was more, he's a little bit older than me, but he was more of a contemporary. These other guys were guys that I looked up to when I was a kid.
Right, when sports, when the athletes were your heroes at that point, where they felt like not even a regular human being, that they were magical in some way.
I have one guy that's still living, and I was going to call him, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to call him like say, hey, you're the last living legend in my life.
Clyde?
No, it's Burt Jones.
Screw Phil Simms!
No.
Yeah, Phil.
No.
Imagine. Hey, Phil, I just wanted to say I love you before you kick it. I understand that point in sports fandom when you're a kid, when you're in your teens, those guys mean so much to you. And of course, I wasn't alive to see it, but that was one of those things you learned right away. You're going to be a sports fan in New York. You're going to know about Willis Reed. You're going to know about that moment. And learning about it over the years, that blackout thing always blew my mind. And the other thing about the video of him coming out onto the court, there's a media member there that he sort of runs over. I always want to know who that guy was, because Willis Reed's like, just get me to the court, get out of my way, and the stories of Wilt Chamberlain, this is always the video here of him coming out, and then the one guy taking a picture and then bumping into him as he gets out of the way is tremendous. Just get out of my way, don't take my picture, get me on the court.
And he hit these first couple shots,
right, and that was it.
One bananas.
Yeah, and then I love the story of Wilt too, where he stopped his pregame routine to look, and then threw him off, and he went over and he was like, "Wait, is he actually playing?" And just think about that. To throw Wilt Chamberlain off his game is something that not a lot of people did.
And that truly was one of the greatest games in Knicks history from the standpoint of not only just winning the championship, but what Clyde Frazier did that game.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we've talked about it 1,000 times on this radio program, and this is why Clyde is a walking icon for a lot of us Knicks fans as well. We had to have the Clyde Pumas when I was in high school.
Sure.
The red suede with the white swoosh and everything. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It was a different time. It was a lot more innocence. You had the Joe Namath thing going on. You had, of course, the Mets, and who came out of nowhere to win a championship, and then these great Knicks teams. They brought in Earl the Pearl after that, and it's just unbelievable what was going on around here.
Yeah, I mean, that time, I can't even imagine. And this is why I always say, with Joe Beningo, and I get mad when he says I haven't seen these championships. To be alive and remember, if you are a Knicks, Mets, and Jets fan at that time, to be alive and remember that, I mean, that's good enough for a lifetime.
Well,
it's good enough for a lifetime. I'm sorry, it is.
I was 9 years old, so...
You remember it, right?
Yeah, I do remember it, and they also landed on the moon that year. Or right before that, I guess.
Right, well, some people think they did, at least.
Right, of course. But, it was just, it's like that melancholy feeling where you just... You attach yourself to one of these guys, and then when they do pass away, you have a dose of reality hit you right in the face.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And it brings you back to better times and better memories and things that were different, and the way that they were looked at was differently. Not everybody had an opportunity to put their opinions out there and just soil whatever the hell's going on. You know what I mean? It was simpler. And as a kid growing up, man, you remember those moments, and you remember sharing those with your dad.
Sure, absolutely. Now, I'm not.
I think I speak for everybody in my generation that when they all found out yesterday, we all felt the same way.
Now, I'm not trying to be funny, but if you were going to call Burt Jones, what would you have said when he picked up the phone? Would you have said, like,
you still there?
Like, you're the last one of my childhood icons? Like, what happened? What's the icebreaker?
I don't know.
You know,
I don't know, but I didn't want to call. I didn't want to do that.
He's probably
Willis Reed died. How you doing, Bert? Everything good?
Yeah, but maybe don't bring it up that way, though. You know?
Yeah, no.
Just be like, hey, I just wanted to check in. Like we were talking about there with, what was it, Dan Deerdorfer? Just want to check in. Haven't heard from you in a while.
Checking in. Haven't heard from you in a while, yeah.
Yeah, just a boomer check-in.
One of those check-in things, yeah.
Little check-in spot.
Yeah.
I would do it.
I just don't know if the motivation is the right, now's not the motivation. Maybe in a couple weeks.
Oh, okay.
Settle down a little bit. There's not so much emotion.
Okay.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, but just make sure you do it, because you probably regret it if you don't do it. It's one of those things.
Yeah.
I just called to say I love you.
Well, I'm not going to do that. I mean,
you could. You did, right? I mean, you loved him.
Of course.
So, it's called to say I love you, Bert. And then, that's it. Hang the phone up. It's me, Boomer. That's all you got to say. Let's move on.
Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the red bell so you're notified when we have new content.